of us prepare for important journeys by packing more. More lenses, more backups, more options. Because the more you bring, the less you can miss, right? But what if the opposite were true? What if the gear you leave behind matters more than what you carry? 2 weeks in Florida, 1 camera, no backups, no second body, just the Fujifilm X100VI and a promise to document the trip of a lifetime for my daughter. She just graduated and her biggest dream, standing in front of a real space shuttle at the Kennedy Space Center. For me, this trip is deeply personal. And the X100VI has to be more than just a travel camera. It has to keep up with real emotions, real moments, and even an entire Fineart project I planned to shoot in Miami. But I had to make her a promise. This time our vacation wouldn't turn into a full-scale photo project. Well, let's see how that went with a photo addict for a dad. A quick note before we start. This video is sponsored by Dehancer, a professional film emulation and grading tool for photo and video. I'm using it to give this video its warm, nostalgic film look. But more on that later. But first, let's start from the beginning. What did I actually pack for this trip? The X100VI limited edition was at the heart of my setup. Since I'm a little paranoid about losing parts of the limited kit, I customized the camera with a Hauge lens cap and matching lens hood. You'll find the links in the video description below. I also added a soft lever style release button from JJC in the exact same finish as the camera and a wooden L grip from SmallRig for better handling and Arca Swiss tripod compatibility. Together with 2 Baxter batteries and a compact USB charger, this setup was complete. Because my daughter is more into video than photography, I also brought my DJI Osmo Pocket 3 with a battery grip, wide-angle adapter, and the DJI Mic 2, which, by the way, is recording this video right now. All of this fit perfectly into my new Peak Design outdoor sling 7 liter. A quick word on that. I asked Peak Design if they could provide the sling for this trip, because I truly believed it was the ideal bag for this kind of travel, and they kindly sent it over for free. 12 hours later, we landed in Miami. First things first, how did the outdoor sling hold up as a travel bag? Honestly, it was the perfect carry-on. It held my 11-inch iPad, both cameras, a Game Boy, snacks, passports, cash, and all our travel docs, while weighing just 300 grams. A featherlight compared to my usual padded camera bags. The compression flexibility was very welcomed. To avoid scratches to the equipment, I packed the DJI kit in a Peak Design ultralight packing cube. And the Fuji in the same cube size extra small. Works brilliantly, especially since the cubes double as standalone pouches as well. Our first stop, 3 days in downtown. With my daughter catching up on sleep, I had a free morning to explore the city with the X100VI. This should have been the camera's natural habitat. The American city humming with life, ripe for that perfect soul lighter moment. But I wasn't quite there yet, jet-lagged and still adjusting to Miami's tropical humidity. As I wandered the streets, my brain shifted into serious mode. I don't see single images, I see projects. Bright yellow accents stood out everywhere. Corner stores, signage, taxis, it all had a visual rhythm. As I wandered deeper into the city, that familiar creative tension crept in. It's the paradox of travel photography. Inspiration is everywhere, yet it can be paralyzing. After about an hour of walking, I made a quick but impactful change. I reattached my Peak Design leash from a standard neck setup to both anchors on the left side of the camera. I was constantly annoyed by the strap getting into the way of my shooting hand. But that's the beauty of modular gear. Small tweaks like this can make a big difference in how fluid the camera feels in use. Following the elevated train tracks and a brief stop at Miami-Dade College, where I stumbled upon an original segment of the Berlin Wall, I eventually arrived at one of Miami's most iconic buildings, the 1000 Museum by Zaha Hadid Architects, and I hit a wall, quite literally. A 35mm lens, tight urban streets, and a skyscraper that reaches into the sky, just not the ideal combo. Add in the harsh late morning light and a cluttered foreground, and frustration crept in. It's tough on the ego, standing before one of the world's most iconic buildings and not pulling off the shot. But I adapted. Switching to the Acros black and white simulation helped me eliminate the messy light. I started looking up, isolating shapes and forms in the sky. What felt like a compromise at the time ended up as one of my favorite takes. But the real gem, a tiny white car driving by outside the lobby. Framed by the louvers of the base, it captured the scale perfectly. Simple, powerful and balanced. Later that day, we visited Super Blue Miami. A massive interactive art space. I set the Fuji to f2, a 60th of a second and -1 exposure compensation, and let the auto ISO handle the rest. From ISO 640 to 6400, it delivered gorgeous colors, smooth gradients and relatively low noise, even in pitch black rooms. At one point, we even walked through a room full of foam. I slapped on an 8th mist filter from K&F as a splash shield, and the camera powered through like a champ. But it wasn't all smooth. That evening, we did a speedboat tour of Miami's harbor.
Alright, good afternoon everybody, welcome aboard. Hey guys, don't tell you, have some fun?
I switched to Acros again to emphasize the moody clouds and dramatic skies. The shots looked great, or so I thought, until the next day when I realized the camera had only recorded JPEGs. Somehow, RAW had been disabled during the boat ride. No idea how, and yes, it's done. The next morning, a hop-on, hop-off bus tour. It was brutally hot, and most of my time was spent bouncing between luxury boutiques and air-conditioned lobbies just to cool off a little bit. A few snapshots at the Institute of Contemporary Art, but not much more. Inspiration felt far away. Then came Wynwood. Vibrant, chaotic, bursting with color. It should have been perfect, but again the heat got the better of me. Sweat drenched and overstimulated, I just couldn't get in the zone. Sometimes you just have to let go. Little Havana though, that clicked. We strolled down Calle Ocho. A uniquely designed McDonald's inspired a rich, colorful, warm edit, and for the first time I felt creatively grounded. Then I stumbled on a Mediterranean-style gas station, perfect for my midnight refuel project. I made a mental note to return at night. The day wrapped up with a glimpse of Lot 11 skate park, framed by the pillars of the I-95 overpass, another shot for later. But that evening wasn't about photography. It was about my daughter reclining in a leather cinema seat, eating warm food in an American movie theater. And that, too, is part of the story. Just 5 hours later, my alarm went off. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, months in the making. A while ago, I came across Tommy Quark's photo book featuring Miami's colorful lifeguard towers. I was immediately drawn in. There's something incredibly calming about the uniformity of his images. The bold, playful structures nestled between ocean and sky felt like a perfect fit for my work, which focuses on architecture immersed in untamed nature. So I started planning, striking towers in a Miller noteboard, researched sunrise times, nearby parking, and the best angles for composition. I found out there are 6 major typologies along South Beach, spread out more widely as you move north from the 4th Street area. Given the time constraints of this non-photography vacation, I decided to focus on the towers south of the 21st Street. So I made sure to arrive early, well before sunrise. At 5 a.m., the beach was still cloaked in darkness. I wandered through the quiet streets of Ocean Drive, completely empty of its usual party crowds. The Art Deco buildings glowed softly in the streetlights, offering a surreal cinematic mood. I just couldn't resist capturing their forms. For this morning shoot, I brought the Peak Design travel tripod, my go-to choice when compactness matters more than height or precision. I missed my Arca Swiss geared head and the towering Gizzo legs I usually rely on. But this trip is defined by its limitations. To protect the highlights in the night images, I bracketed every image in 3 exposures at -3, -1.3 and 0.3 stops at the base ISO of 125 and aperture 5.6 for the sweet spot between depth of field and reasonable shutter speeds. I waited for just the right moments, no cars in the frame, no harsh streetlight bursts, and let the city sleep around me. And I was genuinely impressed by the dynamic range of the X100VI. My HDRs were nearly indistinguishable from the single +0.3 images. Even when overexposed by up to 1.7 stops, the highlights held together. I shot the entire trip in Reala Ace film simulation, which offers strong contrast without the desaturation of classic chrome or the flatness of Eterna. Skin tones stayed beautiful and colors popped just enough to stay natural. Finally, I reached Lifeguard Tower 100, just south of 1st Street. Still immersed in dawn's low light, I began capturing what I had visualized for weeks. One central composition, one angled view, and 2 detail shots for each tower. I wasn't sure yet if I preferred photographing from the left or the right, so I walked a full circle around the tower, only to surprise a couple, well, doing what couples sometimes do on a dark beach. Welcome to Miami. Slightly embarrassed, I moved on, passing early morning poker games, shisha circles, and mini beach parties. Even before the sun had risen, the contrast between the dark backs of the towers and the brightening eastern sky grew challenging. I stuck to bracketing, this time at -1.3, +0.3 and +2 stops, to capture the tonal range from foreground shadow to horizon glow. One surprise, while the X100VI allows up to 15-minute exposures in the T mode, its automatic bracketing maxed out at 30 seconds. I had hoped for longer exposures to smooth out the ocean and sky, creating minimalist, almost abstract compositions. At f4 and ISO 125, I hit exactly 30 seconds, in the end just enough. To gain even more control as the sky brightens, I added the internal 4-stop ND filter and then later mounted a K&F concept 10-stop ND while the sun started rising. That gave me consistent 8-second exposures at f8 even in full sunlight. I was amazed. The camera held highlight detail beautifully, even when the exposure meter flashed warnings. But there were some frustrations too. I had disabled IBIS for tripod shots and set a 2-second self-timer to avoid any camera shake. But both settings kept resetting themselves. Likely due to the auto sleep between walking to the towers? I don't know. Thankfully, none of the images were affected by these settings. I also missed a telephoto lens for my detail shots. Standing too close lost the structure. Standing too far meant I didn't have enough resolution to crop tightly, even with 40 megapixels. Still, I worked fast and focused. I always shoot Fineart series with precision and speed, fully in the flow. By 8 AM, I had fired 333 frames and created 78 final compositions. By the way, if you're curious how I turned these grayish flat RAW files into a warm and cohesive Fineart series, check out my new editing tutorial on my website. I take you through the entire workflow from culling, Capture One editing, all the way through Photoshop finishing. No presets, no secrets. Just a professional, reproducible process. And the tutorial also works great if you're using Adobe Lightroom. After the shoot, we headed for a family day at the Frost Science Center. A perfect way to reset and avoid burnout. That evening, we splurged on dinner at Sexy Fish, Miami's most flamboyant fine dining spot. I handheld a few bracketed shots and stitched them into HDRs, but honestly, I missed having a tilt shift lens, a second focal length, and the time to really compose. Still, the food was fantastic. 3 days in Miami, 35 portfolio-worthy images, not a bad start. But would the Fuji still hold up in the next chapter of our trip?
Olsen's voice had gotten a little shrill. Word would go back on Olsen pretty quick.
We drove up the coast to the relaxed little town of Cocoa Beach for a 2-day visit to the Kennedy Space Center, hopefully including a rocket launch. The travel day itself was uneventful photographically. Some fast food stops, a moody pier in the rain, and a cancelled boat tour due to a thunderstorm. But even in these quieter moments, the Fuji delivered. Handheld 1/4 of a second exposures were tech sharp thanks to the IBIS. And at ISO 3200, the files were still clean, detailed, and flexible in post. The next morning started with a small ritual, choosing our breakfast spot based solely on its architectural flair. Welcome to fast food Fuji style. Then it was straight into a meticulously planned day at the Kennedy Space Center. A place my daughter had dreamed of visiting for years. As a photographer dad, I was now in full documentation mode. Fuji in one hand, DJI Pocket 3 in the other. It was going to be a long day. But just minutes after entering the complex, I realized the soft release button on the X100VI had vanished. Again. That was the third one in 2 years. Usually it turns up in a back corner, but not this time. If you have a recommendation for a soft release that doesn't make a habit of disappearing, feel free to drop it in the comments. It was just the start of a frustrating experience. The longer we stayed, the less I reached for the Fuji.
Tape to stick things on our table here, as well as a bunch of Velcro, so they don't get floating away. If I let it go, it'll kind of just float there.
It wasn't the image quality. It nailed soft bokeh, contrasty tones, and handled low light beautifully. It just wasn't the right tool in that moment. Family travel photography is always a trade-off between being present and preserving memories. To find a balance, the process has to be fast. Responsiveness matters more than technical perfection. And that's when my old iPhone 11 Pro Max took over. With its triple lens setup, it switches instantly between ultra-wide, normal and telephoto. One-handed while I'm filming and carrying 2 water bottles. And honestly, in a setting like this, the X100VI, as great as it is, couldn't keep up with the ease of a smartphone. No zoom, not truly pocketable, and not really a one-handed camera. The first day left me overwhelmed. The pace, the logistics, the simultaneous filming and photographing. On the second day, I stripped the Fuji back to its essentials. No grip, no lens hood, and stashed it in the Peak Design sling, ready to pull out only when something truly worth capturing came along. And then, finally, after a long day at the KSC, that moment arrived. Late in the afternoon, just after a thunderstorm passed, we pulled into a retro diner for milkshakes. It was the kind of place that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1970s. And then, behind the diner, it appeared. A deep red Jaguar XJS V12, parked in perfect light. Its glossy paint reflected the wet asphalt. The trees in the background glowed in a vibrant green. I took a deep breath. For the first time that day, I didn't feel rushed. I framed the Jaguar and something clicked. Not just the shutter, but in my mind as well. It felt like a scene from a different decade. And the Fuji, it captured it all. Effortlessly. The way the Reala Ace film simulation rendered the reds and greens, the way the bokeh smoothed out the background, it didn't feel like a digital photo. It felt like a memory. Warm, soft, and timeless. And to top it all, a rainbow appeared above the diner. These are moments the X100VI was made for. The rest of the day was quiet. We stopped by another gas station, and after sunset we drove to the pier for a bioluminescence kayak tour. But by then the rain had returned and no camera in the world could deal with the darkness, the wet and the shaky boat. Still, we left the coast with memories I'll never forget, and 8 or 9 images for the portfolio. After getting back to the hotel past midnight, we kept things slow the next morning. It was the 4th of July and we celebrated it probably in the picture-perfect town of Celebration. Well-kept front yards, hot dogs, American flags waving in every direction. And a grand finale of fireworks over the lake. This is America in pure form. And the Fuji felt right at home, conveniently documenting the street scenes and festive mood. The next 3 days were an intense marathon of Disney theme parks in Orlando.
Welcome to the Avatar program.
Five Elevator, the latest in space elevator design and technology.
character parades, sweat, screaming, waiting in lines, and once again my initial thoughts from the Kennedy Space Center were confirmed. While the X100VI looks like the perfect everyday snapshot camera, this kind of fast-paced environment is where it starts to fall short for me.
Your escape routes came in a little off target.
It's not that the image quality is lacking, far from it. But when bouncing between rides, racing the crowd, juggling snacks, sunscreen, and a giddy teenager, you don't want to dive through menus to start a video, or wish you had a zoom for a wider shot of a flying roller coaster. You want something quick, versatile, and ready for the chaos. In those moments, my old iPhone and the Pocket 3 had a clear edge. Their pocketability and instant responsiveness made them the better tools. As we approached the Disney Hollywood studios, I saw these beautiful pastel Art Deco buildings at the entrance. Suddenly, I switched into photo mode again. I took some time, I looked, and I remembered why I had brought the Fuji in the first place. Again, this is where the X100VI really shines. It's a camera for intentional photography, for creating images, not just snapping them. Turning the aperture ring, feeling the clicks of the dials, framing through the EVF or OVF. It's not about speed, it's about presence. It's about enjoying the act of photography itself. By the way, if you're looking to combine creative presence with real efficiency in your photo and video editing, this video sponsor might be interesting for you. Dehancer is a professional film emulation and grading tool that gives you access to more than 60 color and black and white film stocks, all designed to recreate an authentic analog film look. What really surprised me when I started using Dehancer is how versatile it is. You can use the plugin in all major video applications like DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut, and Adobe Premiere. And on the photo side, in Photoshop, Lightroom, Capture One, or Affinity. On top of that, Dehancer also offers a mobile iOS app, which allows you to create these same nostalgic film looks directly on your phone or iPad. It's great for quick edits or when you want to keep a consistent color style with your lovely Fujifilm recipes, or you're on the go with the X100VI. As a solo photographer and YouTuber, time is my most valuable asset. Over the past 3 months, Dehancer has significantly streamlined my color grading workflow. Gone are the days of complex node trees and endless research into color space transformations. I simply select the camera I shot with, get a clean and reliable log transformation, and from there I'm working in a familiar interface that feels very close to my photo editing tools. With a single click, I can establish a clear mood. Kodak Gold for that warm 80s Miami beach vibe, or Ilford Super 400 for a more gritty documentary style look on a photo shoot in Berlin's subway. What I really like is that Dehancer helps my video footage visually align with my photography. From there, I still have full control over exposure, shadows, midtones and highlights, as well as classic film parameters like grain, halation and vignette. Dehancer genuinely made me start enjoying video color grading. Later that evening, I set out for another dead time photo session of the trip. Sunset around the world's largest McDonald's. No tripod, no choice of lenses, just me and my camera, wandering in search of the image. I gave in to the rhythm of the traffic lights and passing cars, circling the building again and again, crossing the street, crouching low, climbing small elevations, watching the shifting light of the evening settle in. But again and again, my gaze was pulled across the road, to an abandoned diner, cloaked in stillness. No billboards, no flashy signs, just fake greenery slowly reclaiming its facade. Its silence gave it weight. The absence of noise left the space for imagination. A hollow shell caught between day and night, quietly waiting for a new purpose. Right next to it, a monument to American capitalism. Framed by oversized, screaming billboards, a Hulk Hogan wrestling shop glowed in intense red brickstone, shouting stories of fame, spectacle, and the American dream. At its shuttered doors, two unhoused men looked for a place to rest for the night. And on the way back to the hotel, of course, it was another gas station by the highway that caught my eye once again. In total, Orlando gave me 11 images worth adding to my portfolio. That's more than I expected, given how fast the days flew by. And it reminded me that even in the middle of family chaos, you can find moments to slow down, observe, and create, if you have the right mindset and a camera that encourages it. If you'd like to learn how I approach image composition, exposure, and editing, especially in challenging, fast-changing environments, check out my photography workshops in southern Spain. With only 4 participants per trip, these are deeply personal experiences where I help you elevate your work step by step. And if you shoot with Hasselblad, I've got even more tips and some loan gear for you to try. Links in the description. On our final day at Disney's Animal Kingdom, the Fuji barely saw the light of day. But it was the first item I grabbed when we arrived in Miami Beach that afternoon. Parking right in front of our last place to stay, just steps away from Ocean Drive. The anticipation for a photo walk through this iconic neighborhood, which had shaped my image of America since I was a teenager, was so overwhelming that I completely forgot all the careful planning I usually do. Under the blazing sun with 33 degrees Celsius, heat bearing down on me, I set out in flip-flops and without any water, following Collins and Washington Avenue from the 14th to the 31st Street. With every block, I found myself immersed in the glorious past of American architecture, always accompanied by a hint of shabbiness. The palm-lined streets drew me in. I ignored the thirst and the etching feet, knowing I only had 24 hours to burn this place into memory. When I finally returned to the hotel, completely dehydrated, it took no more than 30 minutes before I grabbed my tripod and headed back to the beach for sunset. I wanted to see how the lifeguard towers looked in the evening light and continue working on my photo series. The sun setting behind me cast a soft glow across the horizon, bathing the towers in diffuse, shadowless light. Moments later, a full moon began to rise over the ocean, adding a surreal mood to the images. Like a midnight sun, it reflected on the surface of the sea, smoothed out by my long exposures. A strong wind howled through the legs of my Peak Design tripod, forcing me to retake nearly every shot just to get a sharp image. Throughout the day, I had been haunted by doubts. Was this frantic search for the next photograph really worth the time? Should I not be sipping cocktails at a beach bar, soaking in the moment, instead of chasing a photo that might not even matter in the end? Are these images valuable? Will they add anything new to one of the most photographed places on Earth? And how strong can a photo really be if it comes from a rushed, planless afternoon? The truth is, I ask myself these questions all the time. and there's only one way to answer them. Go out and try. Roaming the streets with my camera, I confronted those demons, those voices in my head. Not every day results in a portfolio piece, but every day sharpens my eye, refines my taste, and fuels my desire to keep going. So, the next morning, my alarm rang again at 5 a.m. Before dawn, I made my way up to 26th Street, photographing more of the Art Deco architecture. As the light slowly crept in from the east, I turned back towards the beach to finish off my Lifeguard Tower series. This time, fully in the zone, ticking off a mental checklist, one image at a time. Composition, camera settings, the light, everything came together. This time, the clouds on the horizon were thinner, and the golden morning light arrived earlier than 2 weeks before. By 7:30, I had captured the final tower at 12th Street. I set my camera down on the steps of the tower, and for the first time on this trip, I dove headfirst into the warm waters of the Atlantic, free from the weight of image making, carried only by the salty current of the sea. With a coffee in hand and a view over Ocean Drive, I couldn't wait to see the images from that morning and begin editing the series. That final sunrise shoot brought everything together, and in total, I left Miami Beach with 10 new images plus a whole new photo series of lifeguard towers for my portfolio. And if you're curious to see how I transformed dozens of lifeguard tower photos, all shot at different times of day and under varying light, into a visually consistent Fineart series, check out my editing tutorial linked below. I'll show you the exact workflow I use in Capture One and Photoshop, from raw image selection to final color grading. No presets, no secrets. Just an honest deep dive into how I craft my visual stories. As our vacation came to a close, so too does this review of the Fujifilm X100VI. Can a camera like this keep up with the chaotic versatility of a family trip and still create gallery-worthy Fineart images? For beginners and pros alike, the X100VI is a beautiful camera that lets you feel the photographic process. Each parameter lives on its own dial, and the fixed lens forces you to focus on what really matters, the moment in front of you, instead of second-guessing your lens choice. But the truth is, in a family vacation, photography is rarely your only job. You're navigating routes, answering your kids' questions, holding your partner's shopping bags, and exploring places beyond your camera's frame lines. The Fuji won't get in your way thanks to its compact size. And it's quick enough to grab for a snapshot, but it lacks the flexibility for comprehensive documentation. In the past, I always brought a full-frame camera with a 24-105 lens. It could shoot everything, but it was heavy, bulky, and too professional for what I really needed. So my search for the perfect travel camera isn't over yet. The iPhone ticked most boxes, but it never really felt like photography. At least now I know exactly when I love using the Fuji, and when I'm better off with my phone. I really hope you enjoyed this trip through Florida with the X100VI as much as I did. If you want to help this channel grow, leave a like, subscribe, or share the video with a photography-loving friend. Until next time, have fun shooting.